Hi, Randy.
Hi, Alexandra. So happy to be here with you.
And we are so happy to have you. Thank you for making this meeting with me possible.
Oh, I've been looking forward to it. So yay, here we are.
Yeah, here we are. And I was so happy to have your immediate response on the cover. It's just wonderful.
I loved it. I loved it. As you might tell, I am a big fan of color, and I love the tones that you did and the watercolor effect. It was so beautiful.
And the stripes and the tones, they're actually very telling, I think, for emotional advantage, because of all the different feelings could be referred to as colors, right?
Exactly. And we encompass the whole spectrum of colors and emotions and tones. And that's what makes us human. So it's wonderful to have that featured as something that we can embrace. In fact, it's a gift for all of us.
That's so right. I'm gonna stop for a short while and just introduce you. So, Randy Taran, you are the author of Emotional Advantage, which is a book that we will launch here in Sweden, in Swedish, of course, very soon. So we are happy to have you here in our interview channel and get to know you a little bit, because most of our readers and members, they don't find this book in the bookshelf in the stores, so they buy it online, and that's why we think it's so important to actually have this kind of channel to portrait you a little bit deeper. So we have Emotional Advantage. The book is launched in June or July now in 2019. So it's quite new internationally. And it covers 10 of our most common emotions or feelings. How would you differentiate the words emotions and feelings?
Well, emotions, we are given emotions when we are born, and feelings are how we interpret those emotions, how we interact with those emotions. So we have a choice of letting the emotions just take us over, or we can actually navigate those emotions. Like John Kabat-Zinn said, you can't control the waves, but you can learn how to surf.
You have devoted big parts of your life to work with emotions.
Yes, especially starting with happiness. So that was where this whole journey began. And that had to do with kind of a personal wake-up call, if you will, when my own teenager was suffering from stress and depression. And my gosh, if I could do anything, I tried it, but all the books and references that I resonated with did not resonate at all. So I thought there has to be something else. There has to be another way. So that's when I discovered that Harvard University had the science of happiness, which was just starting at that time.
When in time is this? Is this like the 90s or?
No, this was before 2010. It was probably 2007, 8, something like that. And that was a big aha for me. Like, this is amazing. Why is that not being taught to younger people and even other people in general? Do you have to go to an elite school to find out this information? So that became my mission, to share that. And it allowed me to delve in deeply to, positive psychology, neuroscience, mindfulness. And, you know, for years, that was my passion.
Mm.
And it just called to me. And it was very rewarding. But lately, I've noticed a difference. I do a Facebook Live on our website, projecthappiness.org, for the organization, and it seemed that there were more inquiries about anxiety, depression, fear, anger, all these so-called negative emotions. And that was something that I needed to pay attention to. And the timing was rather interesting because not only was my community asking for more information on that, it became something that was interesting, compelling, I would say, to me personally as well, because for years, you're on the happy side of the street and trying to find the solution and make everything right and all that. But what about those shadow emotions, the ones that we would rather not deal with, push aside or later or whatever? That was my invitation to go deeper within myself. And so the book was a personal journey just as much as it was an offering.
That's wonderful. And actually, when looking through the book, it's a whole education. You must have gone through a whole education to write it, because you are dissecting each channel to to the smallest portion, the smallest atom. And it's fantastic to look at one feeling in so many different perspectives.
Yeah, that was the opportunity to look at it from, the neuroscience, to look at it from the historical, to look at it from society, to look at it from behavior and so on, to look at it from change, how we can actually modify and elevate our experience of that emotion. So it was fun. I have to say, it was fun to discover those different facets.
And when you say it was a personal journey, what are your biggest takeouts from that journey?
What a wonderful question. I think I would have to say that my biggest takeaway is that we have more influence over our lives, even over how we deal with our emotions, than I was expecting, And there are so many strategies and tools and best practices that are available now from the East, from the West, from psychology, from behavioral science, and so on, that we can each have a toolbox of strategies, go-to methodologies, tools that we use when the inevitable arises. Of course, things will come up. It's life. We're here to learn, So given that, there's tremendous opportunity for growth and for expansion, for elevation. It's actually very exciting.
It is indeed. And when looking at the book, you actually turn the negative emotions into something positive, and you actually call it a gift. Can we stop there for a while and just check in with the negative emotions that we tend to call negative emotions? How can we see them as gifts, really?
Exactly. So the negative emotions, well, first of all, the word negative emotion is You know, it's something we're trained, you know, we are socialized to see it that way, you know. Don't feel bad, don't feel sad, don't feel anxious, don't feel angry, you know, don't show all of that. But there's a huge opportunity there, because emotions, the definition, it's actually energy in motion. So each emotion, no matter what it is, whether it's falls on the so-called positive side, like love, happiness, desire, you know, we have no problem with those. But you know, the others are kind of red flags. But that energy within each of those emotions, even the so-called negative ones, is providing us with information, clues, messages, often from our bodies as well as our minds. You know, and if we pay attention to that, that is an invitation to course correct, to come back to our true nature. So, for example, anxiety is a wake-up call to make a shift, right? And sadness offers us space for a fresh start. You know, we often try and stuff sadness away, but you know, there's a huge opportunity for a pause, for reflection, for recalibration. Anger, one of the most powerful emotions there is, and how we can use that power, we can channel it rather than have it just hijack our minds, so to speak. So it can be used for social justice. It can be used to protect our boundaries. Really, really important. Sometimes we need that fuel. It just shows us that something is off, as does guilt. For example, guilt is a toothache. I love this quote. It's a toothache of the soul, you know. And it brings us back to our core values. You know, even fear alerts us to danger. It is protective. And on the other side, it's a portal to step into our most courageous way of living. So they all are gifts. They all offer tremendous opportunities if we can be open to that.
That's very true. When we talk about it, I feel I have some personal, I get some personal pictures of how I act in anger. I can feel this fire inside me, and you know, it's heat and it's rage, and it's, oh, you get, like you say, it's a very, very powerful force that comes with anger. But when you're talking about the gift, I would have to be able to stop myself and actually, you know, reflect on that and say, okay, what is the gift here now? But with all that fire and force, how can I do that? How can I stop?
Well, in the midst, it's a good question, and I think most of us have been in the throes of anger, you know, and it can feel uncontrollable. It can feel like we're being swept into this tsunami of emotion, you know. So one thing that is very helpful when it is that big, you know, disengage. You know, disengage. There's no point in going head to head with an individual or an issue when you don't have access to your prefrontal cortex. You know, your the parent mind, your amygdala is taking charge. You know, so disengage is one, and come back to it when you've regrouped. You know, that's one thing. Another technique is to slow it down. So you can imagine that you are in a car, and you can see the speedometer going from 35, let's say, where you're irritated, to 60, where you're kind of pissed off, and then to 85, where you're enraged, you know? And if you just can visualize that, you can also make the decision to, I'm going to slow down this car. I am going to do that. And, you just, by even saying that, you give yourself some distance from the emotion. And in giving yourself some distance, you come to a point where you can regroup and you can say, I'm going to slow this down. And imagine the speedometer going from 85 back to 60. And then you're regrouping and it's coming together. And then back to 35. Okay, now I can look at it. That's another way. And another strategy is name it to tame it. And I just love this. This is from the work of Dr. Dan Siegel. And that has to do with labeling what we are feeling. Where are you in that spectrum? Are you at irritation or are you at blinding rage, And when you can look at that from a more objective perspective, that allows you to make choices, to come back into the moment. You are not the emotion, you are observing yourself experiencing that emotion. And with that, there are so many more possibilities of how you want to handle it, how you choose to handle it,
That is very true. And in the book, you give, these are examples, and you give so many more exercises. So you actually recommend the readers to have a notebook on the side to work with it on its way. So it's both an inspiration, a theoretical book, and it's also a workbook, you could say.
Yes, there's a part of the book that is a journaling prompts, So if you have a journal, a notebook next to you, like for example, for the anger one, there was an invitation to journal about, your childhood. How did you see anger being portrayed? Was it perhaps in a parent or a close relative, an influencer, or whatever? Was that anger acted out in an explosive way? Is that what you witnessed? Or was the anger denied, suppressed, turned into something passive aggressive? So that's knowing that that's what you witnessed. It influences us. As children with the mirror neurons, we absorb everything. So given that, sometimes people repeat the patterns that they have witnessed growing up. And sometimes they go the 180-degree opposite way. Like, no, I will never do that. So if someone was explosive in their life, they end up suppressing their anger. But that's the invitation to journal about that and how it might be showing up in your life today. So just getting to know ourselves better, I think there's so much power in that.
Definitely, I totally agree. I am a person who likes to dig deep into life and understand it from different perspectives. But sometimes I meet people, I'm talking about emotions now in this situation. So I would meet people that say, don't dig too deep into your emotions. It won't help you. Or I don't need to take care of those feelings. Or I don't see the point in delving into this. How would you, what is your response to that kind of approach to life?
Well, I would say maybe there's a short-term gain. Let's say you're at work and you don't want to blow up at your boss or something like that. It's not appropriate or whatever. But over the long term, we can't. We try and bury our emotions or stuff them or ignore them, deny them, suppress them. but they don't go away. You know, under the surface, what happens is like a wound. And often if they're triggered by some wound, some childhood thing, they are going to fester, you know, if they are not brought to the light of day. So, yeah, we hear a lot and we've seen a lot. Keep calm and carry on. And, you know, there is some wisdom in that, but that is not from bearing the emotion, but from having a mindful relationship with the emotion, you know? So what I mean is, if we can actually allot some time to be with our feelings, even the challenging ones, to sit with them, to not run away, distract ourselves onto a phone or a project or a to-do item that seems burning, but to actually be with that feeling and maybe even journal about it. You know, why is it coming up? What is it trying to tell you? Because that's the thing, that's the ultimate message of the book, is that emotions are giving us guidance. So if something is coming up, if repeatedly making a person feel anxious, let's say, you know, yeah, you can ignore it, you can not deal with it, but guess what? Those feelings will not go away. They will show up in different circumstances. So, you know, make the choice, either gently, and I want to say gently because it's scary. It can be scary to confront our emotions. And I don't like the word confront. I rather prefer the idea of sitting with our emotions, almost as if there's something in the book called the peace process, where you imagine your emotion, the hurt, the sadness, the fear, whatever it might be. It's like a child is screaming, like, help me, hear me, hear me. I'm hurting. I'm, you know, this is how I'm feeling. And if we ignore that, it's like putting a child into the basement, right? Bearing that. We wouldn't do that. We wouldn't do that. Every human being would grab that child, put it in their arms, and just be tender with it, you know? Maybe rock it, maybe just be with it, soothe it, allow it to calm down. And that's what happens when we allow ourselves the time to be with our emotions, is that they will dissipate. They will, it's like the energy is bubbling up like a percolator of tea or coffee, and it has to find air, it has to come up, you know? So with tenderness, with self-compassion, we can really heal those emotions in very profound ways, and it doesn't take as long as one would think, and it doesn't have to be excruciating. It is with tenderness, with compassion, rather than the usual way most people deal with their emotions, is to be angry with themselves. I'm angry about being angry, you know, I'm afraid of this fear, you know, I'm anxious about being anxious. It just makes it escalate, right? But this way, we get to the root, we get to the heart of it, we get to the core, and allow ourselves to heal ourselves. There's great promise there.
I can see that, really, that taking care of something, it soothes and tears off the edges of something that is on the edge. and you can, almost like a lullaby, you can kind of rock it to sleep or to whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can put the fears to bed, or the pain to bed, and allow the joy will naturally emerge. We're actually creating more space in our minds and in our bodies that otherwise would be clogged up by the worry and by the escalating emotions. And what's so fascinating is that biochemically, when an emotion emerges, within the chemicals within our brain, when they come up and when they subside, it's actually a very short time. Some research says 6 seconds, but it's only when we add more fuel to the fire by our worries, by our ruminations, and so on, that it becomes bigger, so that a thought becomes a feeling, and a feeling becomes a mood, and then it takes over. But it doesn't have to be that way.
No, for sure. And especially when you add all these extra layers to it, it can go on, and it can be actually something that you talk to yourself about for an entire day.
Yes, some people for an entire lifetime. And it becomes a story that one believes. And that's the invitation as well, to really examine our narratives. We can repeat the old ways of thinking, the critical mind and all of that, just unconsciously, or we can actually rewrite that story so that we are more of a hero in our own story rather than a victim.
That's very true. We can all write our own story, but we forget sometimes, and we just move in the same pattern as everyone else.
Yeah, on autopilot, and that's tempting. However, there's huge benefits to be gained in our lives, in our health, in our relationships, in our creativity, just by opening up to the awareness of the emotions and our triggers and what we can do about it and our choices. It's a huge opening. That's why I call it an advantage, because befriending all of our emotions just is a game changer, literally.
So looking at emotions and looking to your life, you have quite a long life, and I guess you have quite you have young adults as children right now.
Yes, I do. Yes.
How many children do you have?
I have 3 children. My youngest is 27. Then I have a 30-year-old and a 33-year-old. I can't even believe it. Honestly, I can't.
And grandmother.
Oh, one day. They're nowhere near right now, but one day. I just want them to have a happy life, a full life, experiencing the full spectrum of their emotions and learning from them, finding what is meaningful to them. That's what gives me the greatest joy. And unfortunately, they live so far, they're all over the place. So I have to travel to them, I'm okay with that.
My mother has 2 too, and she actually thinks it's an advantage because she gets to travel to Australia, to London, to
Lovely. That's a good problem. Yeah.
You're in the same situation. But so for you in your life and with your family and children, emotions and talking about emotions and living the full spectrum has been important to you. How was it when you were when you were a child in your family back then?
Well, this might be one of the reasons that I was fascinated with the topic. In my family, there was no permission to feel your emotions. You know, it wasn't something that was encouraged. It was more like a keep calm and carry on type of thing. So that's perhaps why it's so important for me to encourage my own children and you know, the people I care about, my community, to open up to this wonderful treasure box that is our emotions, and how it can guide us to be our really best self. And there's so much creativity that can be accessed when we allow ourselves to feel our emotions and learn from them. It's not just feeling, you know, and letting them take us on a wild ride. It's more of what we can learn from every situation and how it can make us stronger. Those are the two questions I always ask.
Do you have any deeper experience of some of the negative emotions
Yeah.
that we talked about?
Well,
From relatives.
Yeah, I would say probably all of them. You know, I think fear has been my companion. You know, fear of stepping into my biggest self, I would say. You know, of leaving the people I love behind. You know, that is one. Anger, I would say, at myself sometimes. My critic mind is always something that I'm paying attention to. And like what I read this morning was so fascinating, is give it a name. You know, this author was saying, I gave my critic's mind the name George. And I tell George whenever he's there, hey, George, thanks a lot, but I really don't need you anymore, you know?
That's great.
Yeah. 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 I think those are, yeah. And maybe a little sadness that, you know, as we grow, the people we love and care about don't necessarily grow at the same pace, or the timeline is not always the same. So sometimes we have to set some boundaries, and there's a little sadness with that, but it's also empowering in another sense. We have to be true to our true nature, our essential self, what we are here for. I truly believe that everyone was born with a mission, with talents, with gifts, with a purpose. And although that is socialized out of ourselves, often through education or whatever happens in life, it is still there. And this book is an invitation to access that eternal, strong, peaceful, knowing, wise part of ourselves, and allow that to emerge and to guide us, because it's there. Everything we need is inside of us. So that's you know, that's truly important to remember and to re-access.
Definitely. And one of your missions, or maybe actually your mission here on Earth, is to spread this knowledge, and especially about happiness, because we haven't talked about it a lot, but let's just check in with Happiness Project for a short while. because that project is not very known, I think, here in Sweden, but it's a non-profit organization within the World Health Organization, right?
It's a nonprofit organization that's based here in United States, and the why it's important today is that the World Health Organization has declared depression to be the greatest cause of human suffering worldwide, whatever gender, whatever age. The good news is that we now have the tools from science of happiness, from neuroscience, from mindfulness to help people find their strategies, their way to surf the waves, so to speak. And what we do at Project Happiness is we have curriculum for children in schools that's quite widespread. And we also have a social media, kind of a brain-friendly way of elevating, accessing our happiness, our inner happiness. So we do it through Mindful Monday messages, little memes and messages, perhaps from science, from spirituality. So Mindful Monday, Gratitude Tuesday, gratitude. Wednesday wellness has to do with, that we know that exercise is the nature's antidepressant, and nutrition powers us forward. It doesn't have to be peaks and valleys, we can do that wisely. And sleep, actually, hygiene, it actually cleans the chemicals that would keep us stressed. So these things are important. Thoughtful Thursday has to do with the benefits of altruism, of paying it forward, that can never be taken away. That's a lasting happiness. And Freedom Friday is letting go of those limiting beliefs that would keep us, like the critic's mind and the voice and all that, and the fixed and growth mindsets. And what else? Saturday, social, how we are all connected. We need one another. And Sunday is soul, returning to the inner wisdom, to our soul. So we put these together, in bite-size little tidbits that can be accessed on Facebook and Instagram. And that's an offering for everyone. And we've had people, oh my gosh, send us messages like, yes, I have depression, I have bipolar, this, that, or the other, and this is helping me. Why? Because it's a practice. The more we practice that, the more it changes the neural pathways.
It's really cool, actually, to realize the power of reminders, to repeat stuff and to remind ourselves every day, and to actually to see when there is a reminder from space or from universe that we can actually, right, there it is again, so that we keep reminding ourselves of how we feel or what we need to do in order to evolve as a human.
Yes, and that's reminder, awareness, call it whatever. That is the key to knowing that we have choices in our life. And so I'll just ask you, what is your favorite happiness practice?
My favorite happiness practice right now is actually, I'm tapping into the world of affirmations.
Yeah.
And reminding myself, like setting intentions. But I'm just in the beginning of this practice, and I think it's something there for me, because I really like the reminding part, and that's also something that I talk to a lot of people about. To don't forget, the reminders are actually our best friends, because it keeps us on track.
Yes, yeah, that's great, and we all have that power to remind ourselves, to architect, whether it's putting sticky notes or something on your computer or around the house, your bathroom mirror or your car, whatever.
Exactly. so nice. So I'm just going to check into my little notes here shortly. So we talked a little bit about project happiness, but something that I wanted to ask you is, because in that project you met with a bunch of very interesting people. So
Yeah.
the actor Richard Gere, you met with him, and you also met with a neuroscientist, and his name was Richard Davidson, right?
Yes, yes.
And you also met with the Dalai Lama.
Right, and George Lucas.
Lucas, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was quite an adventure. We asked, the whole purpose of that film was to bring young people together to answer the question, what is lasting happiness? You know, and that was originated by my quest to find information for my teen. So perhaps coming from other teens, maybe that would give some answers. So at that time, I was doing some work with the Dalai Lama Foundation, which opened up just that very beautiful door to have the young people have an audience with the Dalai Lama in India. So we all traveled there, and it truly was life-changing. You know, they all thought, oh, he would have all the answers, but being the Dalai Lama, he challenged them to find their own answers, which I think is so brilliant and so wise, because the pathway to happiness is different for everyone.
What, meeting all those people, what are your biggest takeouts from them about happiness?
Well, I would say from George Lucas, it was that their greatest joy is in giving and in sharing with other people. You know, there's an expression, happiness is best when it is shared. You know, and what he talked about, short-term and long-term happiness, that we can have short-term happiness, like he said, when I got my first car, but then you can have a whole garage full of cars and it doesn't provide you the same spark that very first thing. So that's, things don't do it. It's more of what you can give to other people. So that was, I think, from George Lucas. The neuroscientist Richie Davidson, his message was that we are always evolving. The brain is always making new cells. We didn't used to think that, but now we know it. So who we are today is not necessarily who we will be going forward. And through practicing these habits that, you know, such as mindfulness, such as gratitude, such a, one would think basic, but so very transformational, we can actually change our brains so that the default is greater happiness. Richard Gere was all about, he was pure empathy, you know, that other people are suffering and we might not realize it. Here we are in our little lives, you know, but to put ourselves in the shoes of someone else just enlarges our world, and it actually makes us feel closer. And the Dalai Lama was, he was like, I have no answers, I have no answers. But really that was an impetus to invite people to find their own answers. And for him, it was, you know, war, killing, and all of that. It doesn't, you know, even though that's all around you, that it's the antidote to happiness. Instead, we are social animals. We need to connect with one another. We need to look for the best and bring out the best in one another. And I think that was such a powerful message too.
Definitely. Fun experience to meet all these people with this kind of discussion subject.
Yes. Yeah, it was really, I think, a gift in my life, and also for everyone who participated. It was something quite unforgettable.
Mm. How could you help your daughter? Was it your daughter who was?
Yes. Yeah. Um, well, I brought each of my kids to one of these interviews, you know, and she came with me to India to visit with the Dalai Lama, and that was a huge wake-up call. Not only, you know, that opportunity to spend those moments with the Dalai Lama, but also to see, you know, a whole different culture. And there were students that had escaped actually from Tibet, and they were living in India. They had nothing, nothing in terms of material things, but they had so much in terms of love and appreciation and gratitude and a sense of meaning and aliveness in their life. And that was an indelible lesson for her and for all of us. And you know, and since then she's gone on to uh, live her passions and be true to her her essential nature, and be the gift that she is to the world. We all are, but it's removing those restrictions or those blocks that would keep us feeling small.
I hear that she's still quite young, and I have a teenager right now who's 13. Well, actually, I have 3 children on my own, and 2 of them are teenagers. And I'm looking especially at my daughter and thinking, gosh, they are in a difficult time with so much, how does it, stress of how they should be, how they should look, what should they do in their free time, where should they go on holiday. I mean, how do you do your nails? I mean, there's so much pressure on superficial stuff.
Yeah.
And it's sad, and I'm thinking that this book would be something that is good for everyone to read. Maybe not as a young child, but pretty early in teens, you could probably benefit from this too. What would you think?
Oh, absolutely. And we've had parents give it to their children, you know, and whole families do the journal things and get to know one another and themselves in a deeper level. I mean, that's the kind of information that and strength that no one can take from you. And no matter what circumstances you face at any age, even teens, it makes you know yourself better. You understand your strengths and your triggers, and know that you can make choices as to, am I going to buy into this? There's so much information coming in from social media. And, you know, we try and use it for good, but there's research that's come up that we are addicted to our devices. And I would imagine it's the same for you. Yes. It's global and purposefully so, designed to be so. So if we can look at it with a discerning eye, especially teens, you know, that a lot of the messages are designed to instill fear that you're not enough, you know, fear that you're not pretty enough, or you're not going to the cool places, or you're not, you know, cool enough, whatever it might be. That's keeping us stuck and small and contained. So if we can just have some media literacy about that, that we don't have to buy into these messages as truth. You know, they're not the truth. They are messages that would encourage a certain feeling. You know, if you feel like you're not enough, and you're not good looking enough, you're going to buy makeup, right? You know, or you have to keep up with the latest fashion, music, whatever, in order to feel like on top of things. There's FOMO, fear of missing out. But all of that pales when we reconnect with our inner core, with who we are on the inside. And I'm talking, you know, on a soul level. You know, if your, is that your daughter?
Yeah.
Yeah, if your daughter can spend some time just maybe journaling or getting to know herself on the deepest levels, maybe doing some mindfulness, and it doesn't have to be sitting and meditating. It could be taking a walk in nature, having a favorite spot, you know, and just sitting and thinking, or, you know, maybe it's doing some physical activity that takes you out of your mind and reminds you of who you are. That's a huge fortifier and an antidote. And the idea of choosing friends that support your dreams and support who you are and who you can be, right?
Yeah.
Seeing one another for our potential instead of, you know, what's quote wrong. There's nothing wrong. It's all lessons, you know. So how are the challenges that she's facing giving her information, ideas, ultimately making her stronger? Like, let's say a friend was mean, you know, and then maybe she would say, well, what kind of friendship was that? How would I describe that friendship? And what do I want going forward?
Yeah.
You know?
Trying to be a little bit smart about it already early in life.
Yeah, because these things, you know, high school drama happens even no matter what age you are, right? So it's best to have an understanding of what it is and what you choose to surround yourself with, who you choose to surround yourself with. And I always say it's better to have, you know, just a few close friends, even one or two, rather than, you know, all the likes or the hearts on social media. That doesn't mean much at the end of the day.
No, it doesn't, definitely. I really like you are coming back to the information part all the time. And I really like that because what you're saying is that we can see that everything in life is giving us information. Even our emotions are giving us information. And friendships are giving us information, and difficult situations, etc.
Yeah.
Can you evolve that a little bit?
Well, there's the expression, life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And I'm sure you've heard that, and your audience has as well. But there is some real truth to that, because if we believe that the universe is a friendly place, you know, either it's out to get us or it is a friendly place or has the potential. And there's a word called pronoia, which is the opposite of paranoia. Yeah. And pronoia means that what if things were orchestrated so that you could learn and grow and ultimately come into the fullness of who you are. So if we look at life that way, there is nothing that can break us. It's all about learning. It's all about finding the gem within the challenge, the advertunity, the opportunity within the adversity. What has this revealed to me about myself? So I think it's a way of looking at life. And if that is not readily available, I would recommend doing a gratitude practice. Just a couple of things you are grateful for in the morning, and if you're able to, before you go to bed at night, about the day. Could be a wonderful cup of tea, or could be a great conversation. It could be, I learned I was stronger than I thought in that circumstance. I learned that I am good at this, because often we don't focus on our strengths. Our negativity bias forces us to look at, what's wrong. But through gratitude, and it can be however suits you, you're not bad if you don't do it every day. Just have it be something that you come back to again and revisit, because over time you'll look in that journal and you'll marvel at how much there is in my life that is working already. So that's a way to reset the mind, and it really, I would say, it's the fastest way.
Thank you. Good tip. So let's start with gratitude practice.
Yes. Yeah.
And I would actually tell my children to do the same. They lost their cat yesterday, or actually.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're in a sadness place right now.
Yeah.
Trying to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And if they could be with that, don't try and muffle it away. Actually, and the one thing about sadness, and especially grief, is that it is a reminder of the love that we have for that animal or person, so it's a way of honoring that love, and there's nothing bad about it. Tears are nature's way of just releasing those chemicals. It's a good thing, yeah. On the subject of gratitude, I just want to offer one more practice, which is so powerful, and that is writing a gratitude letter. And maybe you've done that already, but it's, well, what it is all about is thinking of a person in your life who has been there for you, who's had your back, who's maybe seen something in you that you were not capable of seeing within yourself. Who is that person for you? And it could be in your past, it could be in the present. And write a letter to them, just pouring out how much they mean to you in your life and how much you appreciate them. And in doing so, you just open up to those warm, wonderful, loving feelings. It's transformational just to be able to put that on paper. And then if that person is around, the opportunity is to go and read them that letter, or even do it over the phone. I'm telling you, I've seen both people crying and just laughing and just hearts blasted wide open. It's just such a wonderful connection and a reminder that there is so much love around us and so much to be grateful for.
Yeah. It sounds like a fantastic practice or exercise. I can also feel for myself a lot of fear around that kind of practice. To how do I dare to do that? What would she say? What would he say?
Yeah, well, chances are that they would be moved and touched, maybe surprised in a delightful way, you know.
Just the
It's
positive stuff.
I can't see anything negative coming from it, because, you know, when we come from genuine appreciation, there's no negativity cannot coexist with that. You know, that force is too big. I invite you to try it.
I will, definitely. I've done something similar once, and on an SMS, which is also quite, you know, not doing a big thing about it, but just send out a very nice message with you know, the thoughts that comes to your mind when you feel that striking love for someone. Just send that SMS, and what you get back is maybe a text saying, "That's the nicest thing anyone ever told me." It's quite nice to hear as well.
Beautiful.
It
That's
is.
absolutely beautiful. And one researcher, Sean Acor, says if you can do that in your workplace, you know, send a thank you or an acknowledgement every week or even every day if you want to someone, that will foster just such a warm feeling within your organization. It's a powerful practice.
It's very true. Sometimes I wonder why we are so infested, is that the right word, with how things should be, structures and ways to, well, practices and structures that don't let people being nice, they're not let in, and they're not included in that. Why is that?
Do you mean in a work environment mostly?
Many times in a work environment, yes.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think it's a mistaken way of thinking, because thinking that people will be more productive if there's no emotions, or if, you know, if we stick to the rigid structures that it's proven and so on. But the thing is that we are always evolving. Life is dynamic. You know, when we can allow for our humanity, and even the expression of vulnerability at times. I met a young CEO on the plane recently, very recently, and we got into a very fascinating conversation. And he said that he did a retreat with his team and spoke about who you, the me you see, no, what you don't know about me is ... And he started to share with his team in a very authentic and vulnerable way about some of the challenges, the emotional challenges that he has faced in his life, and why he's created the culture in a certain way as a result of that. And he invited people to go off in groups of 2 and talk about, you know, the me you don't see is, or whatever. And he said they came back just electrified and happy and connected, and nobody leaves his company. They are they are in it for the mission, for the culture. I think that's a newer way of approaching life in general.
Because that's more honest, right? If I
Yeah.
can see who I am, and if I don't have to hide that from my teammates,
Yeah.
then I am in truth. I'm standing in truth, and you can see me for who I am.
Yeah. And not only in truth, but in your strength.
Yeah.
The strongest people allow themselves to be vulnerable. It's the people that are afraid, to reveal their true selves that are encased in that fear. There's a certain freedom in being one's authentic self, and I think that really opens the doors to authentic communication and caring, far beyond the tasks at hand. It's more caring for others as people, and also knowing people's strengths. Their areas of strength, and kind of where they will blossom. So that's even better for the long-term goals of an organization, I think.
I totally agree with you. Well, maybe one day a lot more will work that way. Hopefully.
I think it's a trend. I think it's a trend that's starting, and the put it this way, I think the smartest and the most progressive groups are adopting that now. And if one is working with millennials and so on, they need that truth aspect and the mission that's perhaps bigger than themselves.
Can you sense that?
Oh, yes.
That? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Money is not the greatest motivator. It is being seen and feeling connected and having that social relationship. At the end of the day, what are we going to remember, right? It's our relationships and the moments in time that have allowed those to blossom, right? If we take a long-term view of things.
Why do you think it is that our first impulse is to deny negative emotions, or what we call negative emotions?
For protection, because we are afraid that they will take us down, they will mess with the status quo, that the fragile equilibrium that we all, the illusion of security, so welcoming the negative emotions can be a scary thing. But even Rumi had a poem about welcome them all to your home, as guests. They have much to share. So if we can change our perception of negative emotions into, they're not negative emotions, they are let's say powerful emotions. They are full of information, full of guidance for us. They allow us to learn from a situation and architect our next steps in a way that so we don't have to re-experience the pain within those negative emotions. The pain is there when we ignore them, and we think that when we just push it aside, we can go on and carry on. But there is a point in time where everything catches up, and if we can look at them as messengers. So, like anxiety, what are you trying to tell me? What do I need to do? What kind of change would make this better? Um, Anger. What is the root of this? What is really going on here? And so on. We have those answers. So if we can engage with our emotions, it really is a definite advantage in our life. We save so much time.
Yeah. And it's not about denying them. It's actually lifting them up, right? And look at them,
Yes.
instead. Because
Yeah.
it's also a thing in our life or in our society that we should not, we talk about happiness a lot. Mm-hmm. And when you focus a lot about on happiness, it's some people interpret that like, okay, so it's not okay to feel anger, it's not okay to this and that, but that's not what we're talking about here. It's actually allowing all the feelings into the living room and look at what each and spend time with them and get to know them, right?
Exactly. And a big a catalyst, I guess, to working through them is accepting how you feel. Like, yes, I'm feeling I'm feeling afraid right now. I am, and then the idea that am I the only person that's feeling afraid right now? No. There's the common humanity. This goes back to the self-compassion thing. It's like being mindful. Yes, this is what I'm feeling right now. Huge, huge open door when we can accept how we are feeling and hold it. Understand that this is part of the human experience. And then self-kindness, approaching it with kindness towards ourselves. In other words, be your own coach rather than your critic.
That's
transformational.
Be your own coach rather than your critic.
Yeah,
that's good. Coaching, because we're asking people around us for coaching all the time.
Yes, and what
about ourselves.
Exactly, and when we can remember that we do have answers inside of ourselves that we can access, and it's usually in the stillness or in nature. So if we can actually make that a priority, whether it's a few minutes in the morning, go to bed earlier, wake up a little bit earlier, so you have that spaciousness, that time to be with yourself, to make your intentions, your affirmations, to accept how you might be feeling, and then plan around that. Accepting is number one, and then from that acceptance, then we can take action. And boy, with that, anything is possible.
That's very true. So I want to ask you a couple of, a little bit snappier questions, just to look into your day a little bit.
Sure.
So where do you live, by the way? Where are you now?
I live in Northern California, and next to a town called Palo Alto. It's a smaller town, and there's lots of nature, as you can see in the background.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Is that where you're also? Did you live there for the entire life, or?
No, I was born in Canada,
in
Montreal, and I've lived in New York and LA in different places, and this is home. So
you speak French?
Yes.
Fantastic. Yeah. I have a sister living in Paris.
Oh, how lucky. That's nice.
It is.
We get to visit.
Yes. I love the French language as well. So do you have any siblings? We talked a little bit about your children, but
Yes,
were you brought up with siblings?
I was. I have 2 sisters and 1 brother.
Yeah, nice. And where in the group are you?
I'm the eldest.
Oh yeah, big
Yeah.
sister.
Yeah. How about you?
I am also big sister in a group of 8, but they're
Lovely.
different parents. But
Okay.
being one of the older ones, I have 1 older brother. But being one of the older ones, I have all of them in my group, which is very.
That's lovely. That's great.
It
A
is
big plan.
a big one, definitely. So, do you have a motto in life, like a truth that you live by?
I think I look for the best in people.
Mhm.
That's very good. And also the gratitude practice is it's so pivotal to my life. Yeah.
That's good. And when you have some free time, what would you like to do then? What do you do the first thing that you have some free time?
Yoga is my go-to. I'm a yoga fanatic. I've studied it quite a bit. I've done teacher training in hatha yoga, kundalini yoga. It's very restorative for me. How about you?
It's funny. I am totally the same, but I didn't study it that much yet. But my children are still very young, so I'm actually planning on delving more into to yoga, and we're actually giving out a book this spring that is more into the philosophy of yoga, because I think it's quite forgotten.
Yes.
Very
Right.
much focus on the practice of yoga and the asanas.
Yeah, that's just one very small part, as you know.
Yes, and there is so much to it, to yoga. Yoga is a lifestyle.
Yes.
Yeah. So hatha yoga is also my favorite. I started out with kundalini.
Oh my
Right
goodness! Wow.
back then, 20 years ago, that wasn't something that I wanted to pursue, but Ashtanga came in, and then hatha yoga.
How wonderful.
It is. So one day I can meet up with you and.
Yes, I have a yoga sister.
Yes, exactly. No, it's. You said it's very. To you, it's.
Did I say restorative or re-energizing?
Yes,
All of those, yeah.
yes. It's one of those times in a day where you actually can. Yes, when you can restore and look inside.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's great.
Yes. So, what do you like to eat when you cook? Do you cook?
Yes, I prefer cooking for friends than for the everyday mundane stuff. But I've learned what my body likes and what it doesn't. I think I have an allergy to dairy and perhaps wheat, so I tend to do those very little, and a lot of vegetables, and then proteins, less protein, but definitely important. And I love soups. Even in the hottest day of summer, I would love a soup. So.
Do you find soups in California? It's not the soup place, I would think.
Not per se, but there's so many wonderful recipes, and you know, and there's a whole soup world.
Definitely, you can make a soup out of anything.
That's right.
So, is there anything you would like to share with your readers and listeners in Sweden?
Well, I just want to say how much I appreciate you And it means so much to me that, something that, I was writing with my dog beside me. You never know if it will resonate with people. And that is my greatest hope, that it will give you some tools, a toolbox of strategies to empower your life and allow you to live it to the fullest. And above all, appreciate the gift that you are and the magic in sharing that gift with those around you. That's how we change the world. I truly believe that.
I think so too. I believe that too. Your book will actually be launched in Sweden right before Christmas.
Oh,
So
what a wonderful time.
During this meeting, I'm thinking, gosh, this would be the best Christmas gift to people in your life that you really care about, because anyone would benefit from reading this book.
Yeah, it's not a box of chocolates that goes away. It's something that can stay with you. That's the idea. Yeah,
certainly. And all the tools is just reading about an emotion is one thing, is very empowering per se, but all the exercises and tools actually can change things in your life quite quickly.
Yeah, that's the thing. Awareness, reading about it, plus action, whether you're journaling or putting it. Take one small thing, choose which exercise is your favorite, and try that in your life, and that leads to huge shifts and possibilities.
Yes, certainly. I want to thank you so much, Randy.
Oh, it's my pleasure, really. I'm so enjoyed our conversation, and lovely to know that I have friends in Sweden. Yay!
You do, and many more to come in very soon.
Thank you.
Know what happens next.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Namaste.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.